In this episode of the Gut Gang podcast, I sit down with Dr. Oudi Abuchakra, oddly enough, in London, England, where we were both facilitating alongside Dr. John DeMartini at his flagship program, The Breakthrough Experience. And that's the common thread that him and I both share. Dr. Oudi is a very, very well-rounded individual and quite the speaker. Now, I don't want to use the term motivational speaker because motivational speakers tend to pull and push on the strings of external motivation and emotions with their audience, where Dr. Oudi, he's inspired, and he's truly inspired from within. He is a man on a mission. And when he speaks, you can truly sense the authenticity and his sincere desire to make an impact and leave an impression and truly help people. So this episode was very, very special. Lots of golden nuggets, a lot of teaching points. He is a multiple best-selling author. In fact, we were discussing his most recent book, Fear Forward. And I want you to really enjoy this episode. Sit down and take notes, because I absolutely guarantee there's going to be a lot of moments where it'll hit home. It really, really will. Now, take into account with a grain of salt, there was some audio issues with the recording. I was filming in England. It was a new environment. I didn't have Christian, my audio engineer, so I'm going to pass the buck a little bit to him. Nevertheless, the audio is still there. You can really hear both him and I speak, but there's some moments where there's a little bit of an echo. So I do apologize in advance. Nevertheless, it won't take away from the value of this episode. I hope you enjoy.
All right. Gut Gang Podcast episode. I don't know what episode number this is. And in the last episode, I was in Costa Rica shooting with Dr. Tom O'Brien. That video hasn't been uploaded yet, but it will. This one, I'm not sure when we're going to upload it, but we are in a completely different environment. I'll show some footage at some point, but we're in how old would you say this building is? It's got to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? So we are in London, England, just wrapped up the Breakthrough Experience. This is in the Bloomsbury Hotel, and I am interviewing Dr. Oudi from currently residing in the Emirates.
Yes.
But are you American or Canadian?
Born in Lebanon, raised in Toronto.
Okay. And we're going to get into that. So Dr. Oudi doesn't know much about my podcast. As you know, as the listenership knows, the prerequisites are as follows. When you come to my studio, you have to do a cold plunge and a sauna, which are all mic'd up, and then we shoot the podcast. Or you have to be a graduate of my Gut Reset program. That's what we were talking about.
Right.
But I don't want to be interviewing all my students. So that's why I interview other people. And the other prerequisite is you have to be an amazing human being.
Okay, so I'm screwing all this.
So the relationship that we have is there's a commonality among us, and it is one of our mentors, Dr. John DeMartini. So that's why I'm here right now in London, England. That's why you're here. And it's pretty incredible to learn from you and get to share your space, and you're going to be sharing this in the interview. I have been a student of Dr. John's since 2006, actively since 2008. That's when the first time I saw him. But over the last maybe 2 years, really immersing myself in his teachings and becoming certified and so forth. But you've been doing this a heck of a lot longer, have you not?
Yeah, I actually met John because I'm a chiropractor by profession.
Okay.
And so he came and spoke because he's a chiropractor as well. He spoke at our college. God, I want to say 97.
Okay.
That was the first time I heard him speak.
Wow, amazing. So let's go. So normally the way that I do these podcasts, it's kind of like where you were, your background, where you currently are, and then where you're going to the moon, right?
And beyond, yeah.
Yeah, of course. So why don't you share quickly your background, who you are. You obviously met Dr. John in 97. So what were you doing back then? And then we'll kind of ebb and flow wherever we go.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I was raised in Toronto. My story really starts, man, like in high school. Because when I was 16 years old, I failed all my classes except for PE. I don't even know if you can fail PE, right?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe some.
Yeah, I guess you could fail. It was pretty hard to fail just by not being there. But I was there, and I got straight Fs and everything. And my PE teacher said, I just didn't want to see my face again. So you could say I got an F off in PE. And I was a lost kid, because I felt like my dream of being an NHL hockey player was cut at age 16.
Okay.
And that's kind of when I developed maybe a little chip on my shoulder.
Right.
Wasn't inspired about life. Was just chasing the next party, really. I went to chiropractic school because I met an amazing chiropractor, Dr. Thomas G. Kalina. And yeah, when I went to chiropractic school, I was just blown away by the philosophy. When he spoke at the school, he was focused more on the philosophy side of things, right? Not on the technique and building a practice.
Okay.
And I was really inspired by that. By, anything speaking about personal growth, personal development, inspiration, all that kind of thing. I was just eating that up. I was just loving that because that was the missing piece in me, I felt, And so when I graduated at age 27, I opened a clinic in Toronto. And DeMartini was speaking at a conference.
In Toronto again?
In Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. And he shared what I thought was the longest quote at the time I ever heard. I think I told you this.
Say it again, but slow it down.
Yeah, okay. So he said, when you do what you love and you love what you do, you magnetically attract the people, places, things, ideas, and events to fulfill your purpose in life and you feel your true worth. And that was just minutes into his seminar. And I left the seminar.
What do you mean you left? Like after that statement?
After that statement, I exited the seminar. I left the conference.
That was enough.
That was enough, and it was enough to stimulate my curiosity and put me on a pursuit for truth, because that's what I've been searching for my whole life, is just trying to understand what are the real principles, the lasting principles that stand the test of time. And I found it to be accurate.
Okay, so then say that quote one more time.
Yeah.
And then lead into why you left early and what you did with your time.
Sure. So the quote is, when you do what you love and you love what you do, you magnetically attract the people, places, things, ideas, and events necessary to fulfill your purpose in life, and you feel your true worth.
Amazing. Okay, so
Bye-bye, I left.
you left. Then what'd you do?
Then I put it into practice. I just started, when I mean put it into practice, I started testing to see if this is accurate by observing my day-to-day activities. And crazy things would happen. Miraculous things would happen that, the kind of synchronicities where, I would have a target of, seeing a certain number of patients a month or reaching a certain financial target or something. And then it would happen on the last day of the year. On New Year's Eve, when I was thinking, should I open, should I not open? And then all this magic happens, just, incredibly. And so I called him and I said, look, this quote I heard from you is incredible. I'd love to write a children's book on it, because at the time I was a practicing chiropractor. I was doing some talks.
Okay.
And I was writing kids' books.
Why were you writing kids' books?
That's a story.
Okay.
That's a story. It was after a near-death experience in the car that I felt like called to write. And so this content drew me, right? This one line. So I called him up and I said, look, I'd love to write a kids' book on this. I want to come to your next event in Calgary. He's like, well, Oudi, it's not an event, it's an experience. I think I said seminar. I'd like to come to your next seminar. I said, well, it's not a seminar, it's an experience. I said, well, I'm not interested in experience. I'm interested in just writing a book. He's like, you can't just sit in the back of the room and write a book, because it's an experience. And anyways, we started negotiating, and eventually I landed on, okay, fine, I'll visit. And we agreed on a kind of a refresher fee.
It's interesting that you started to negotiate, because Dr. John 2024 would not be in a position to sort of just answer the phone and then, communicate and negotiate, because he's so much bigger and busier. You got him at an accessible time.
Yeah, I like to think of it as pre-secret.
Okay.
Because the movie
yes,
is
that's
secret.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of I feel like that's when he went to the next level. And in terms of the world knowing what he does, because we've known that him pre-secret too. So pre-the secret.
No.
Oh, you know.
The Secret for me, 2006.
Okay.
It came out, and so for everyone that does not know, we'll tiptoe and then we'll dip our feet more and more in this conversation about Dr. John. But yeah, 2006 for me, it was The Secret, and then that was my first introduction.
Got it. Okay. So I visited Calgary and I attended the Breakthrough Experience, and I wasn't really paying attention, to be honest. I mean, I was there. I had a vision to write a book, and that was why I was there. So doing the 2-day experience was just kind of what I needed to do as a stepping stone to get to what I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Means to an end. But after each day, we'd spend time, and I would pick his brain on the book. And so I dedicate the book to him. It's called Doing What You Love. And the principle in the story for kids is when you do what you love and you love what you do, you attract the rest like a magnet.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
and
cool.
we used an image of him to, we made a cartoon and
Yeah, right.
yeah.
That's so good.
So that's how we met, and then I started going to other events that he was doing, and same thing. I was the guy that was in the room writing a book, basically.
Yeah.
Paying attention, kind of like continuous partial attention.
Sure.
Paying attention to him and paying attention to the book and what was going on around me.
What a great way to honor him and incorporate him in the book. You being at the breakthrough, but at the same time, I can see what you're doing. You're trying to killing two birds with one stone.
Yes.
Right.
Feeding two birds with one seed.
Yeah, that's
no killing.
I love that. That's way better. I've never heard that before. Feeding two birds with one seed.
Yeah, one big seed.
One big seed.
Yeah.
That's such a good quote. Okay, continue.
Yeah, I like it. So yeah, then my dad passed away in 2004.
Okay.
And that's when things really took a shift. I hired John to consult with my mom, and he did a fantastic job, as you would expect. And then my mom said, he said everything you said. And I said, Mom, I'm a student of him. I studied this whole, helping people with bereavement process under him.
Yeah.
But I can't be the guy.
No, family dynamic. When does a parent listen to a kid, and when does a kid listen to a parent? Not often. But at least you provided the resource.
Right.
Which is
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah. And when Dad died, I'm not in the right state to sit there and coach my mom because there's so much going on. But yeah, so that's kind of where things took a turn, because when my father died in 2004, my mom was there for me during my toughest challenge in life, and that was cancer at 21.
Oh, wow.
So I said to my mom, I said, look, you were there for me in my toughest time. This is your toughest time. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get you back on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should just change it up. Just jump on an airplane, travel the world until you're ready to get on your feet again. And I opened the map of the world and I said, where do you want to go? And she pointed to the Emirates. And she pointed there for a reason, because my brother and sister were there, right? It's not like a random place you just wanted curious to visit. She was there because her kids were there, her grandkids were there. Mm-hmm. That was the most meaningful place on the planet for her.
And is she originally Middle Eastern Lebanese?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And my brother and sister were living there, working there. And so that's when I sold everything I had, gave away my clinic, and we moved to the Emirates. I landed in the Emirates with no job offer, no money to practice.
What year was this?
2004.
Wow.
Yeah. Lived with my sister and her 4 children, her beautiful family in LA.
Okay.
Which is an hour out of the city, approximately, from Abu Dhabi, main city.
Okay.
And in the middle of the desert, middle of nowhere. And I went to a car rental company in Dubai, and I basically said, look, I'll do some talks for you, because I was doing lots of talks at the time. And can you, in exchange for a car, because I just want a car to go around and see different clinics and see where I'm going to kind of position myself.
Sure. And this is probably it's earlier than the boom with Dubai and the Emirates, but it was starting.
Yeah, it was early days. It was definitely it was attracting a lot of international expats to live and work there.
Right.
Great offers and stuff. But it was pre Burj Khalifa, if you will, the tallest burj in the world.
Okay.
Which was built in 2008.
Got it. So I guess everything after that, it was just pandemonium. Everyone's influx of tourists and business. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's been growing
ever since.
Exponentially ever since.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about your experience moving, and then tie back into your modalities with Dr. John and so forth, because there's so much depth that I want to unpack there.
There's a lot to talk about. In terms of the move, it was, like I said, it was basically just put everything up for sale. I sold everything I had. It was literally, the negotiation sounded like this. A guy would come in and say, hey, how much you want for your TV? I'm like, $200. He's like, I'll give you 100. I said, 150. He's like, done. Boom. Mm-hmm. Next item. Everything just moved quick.
Lock, stock, and 2 smoking barrels. Out.
Yeah, 100%. Just offloaded everything.
Yeah.
Went there with just a little bit of money in my pocket, just enough to get a car and a little pocket change, pretty much.
Can we go back? Totally sorry, but you'd mentioned cancer. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
What kind was it? And you were young. You were 21.
Yeah, it was Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
And it was a very important time in my life, because it was the greatest curse and the greatest blessing.
I really want the listenership and the viewership to listen to this, because there's going to be some golden nuggets right now to pay attention to. I've got one of my clients, her son, I think is maybe 21. He was just diagnosed with testicular cancer, already removed one testicle, and they're, moving along. And there are so many young teenagers, young adults that are diagnosed with cancer. So I really wanted to listen to this because there's going to be some power for this.
100%. Cancer is not uncommon, as you know. But it was a really interesting time because when I was diagnosed, just before that, just to kind of do a little rewind, okay?
Sure.
When I was 18 years old, I was in grade 12 and just graduated high school. I didn't want to pursue, higher education. So I was on a boat with my sister, who's a kidney specialist, and we were visiting her friends. They lived in a beautiful log cabin on the lake. We were on their boat. Okay, all the electronics you can imagine with nature. It was a perfect mix of nature and future. And I said to my sister, "How do you live like this?" And she knew where I was at that point in my life when she answered. She said, "There's two ways, Oudi." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Go to university or sell drugs." So I was like, "What kind of drugs?" So that's when I signed up for university. That's when I decided to pursue that. When I got there, I found that university was a fancy word for just more school. And I hated school, as you know. In my second year, right before my final exams, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's. Right before a summer with plans of just partying like never before, And when I got the diagnosis, I thought it was the end. I really thought it was the end. Some people respond really well to Hodgkin's. I was diagnosed, it was caught stage 1. I know a cousin of mine who died from it. And my sister, when she said to me, everything's gonna be okay, I thought that was sister talk for, this is the end, just don't self-destruct kind of thing.
Right.
And I wouldn't be caught dead in the library. There's no internet. So I thought, I really had this premonition that it was the end.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my room and I heard this Bob Marley lyric. We were talking about Jamaica earlier.
Yeah.
And the lyric was from a song, Pass It On. And the lyric is live for yourself and you live in vain. Live for others and you live again.
Say that again, right to that camera.
Live for yourself and you live in vain. Live for others and you live again.
Powerful.
I didn't know what that meant though, eh?
Mm-hmm.
It sounded great.
Sure.
But I didn't know how to unpack it.
Yeah.
And so I racked my brain in my room like days and days just thinking, what does that even mean? Like, I want that, right?
Yeah.
And then I had this idea just kind of hit me like the apple on the head, right? And the idea was, I'm gonna get straight A's on my final exams because they never believe it. The guy who hasn't seen A's, except for the 3 A's in my last name, right? And I'll get straight A's on his finals. It wasn't easy, but I did get the A's to my surprise and theirs. My physics professor said, no one gets an A in the University of Toronto final. Like 20 years I've never seen it. And so I redid it in front of him. He thought I was cheating. And that's when I learned this powerful lesson. And the lesson is, if you want to finish first, right? If you want, let's put it this way. If you want to get an A in life,
yeah,
and you want to finish first, but when I say finish first, I don't mean being better than anybody else. I just mean the best version of yourself.
Okay.
If you want to finish first, put yourself second.
Okay, hold on. Say that again.
Yeah, if you want to finish first, put yourself second.
Who do you put first?
Well, that's the thing, right? Service, because I couldn't do it for me. But when I did it for them, it was almost too easy.
Right.
I couldn't get an A for the life of me. And then I got an A when I was approaching death because I thought of the gift. I imagined that if my family, if they buried me and they'd say, look what this guy did before he left. I got goosebumps right now.
Me too.
And I'm thinking, and they're thinking, like, he actually thought about us. And that's what's really inspiring in life, right? When people live a life of service, when they leave something behind that can impact the lives of others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I was focused on. That was it. That was my number one thing, just nail the exams. Of course, be healthy. I wasn't partying anymore. I had a handful of friends that stuck around, and
I'm sure you realized real quick who your friends were and who weren't.
100%. That was one of the gifts, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And ever since then, I just fell in love with university because when you feel like this is the end and everything will be gone and will be taken from you,
mm-hmm.
there's a magical way that you somehow, your consciousness expands and you start appreciating things even that you hated. You go from hate to appreciate.
Yeah. Well,
I appreciate university big time.
I think there's a level of inability to experience that until one does experience near death, or maybe a really close loved one or someone that passes away. Because if you don't really experience it, then you don't know what death feels like or loss feels like. Would you agree or disagree? Or
yeah, I mean, unless you're facing something where, like you said, a loved one is near passing, or you've experienced a near-death experience, or you're battling with this idea of living and dying, right? I don't know. It's tough to go there without something like that. And for me, that is like, it really is one of the greatest gifts.
I was just going to say,
it sounds absurd.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. Cancer was my disease, and cancer was my cure. At the same time.
How many people would benefit from that belief?
I'm actually speaking to a group of, well, we're in discussions to be speaking to a group of cancer patients. I've done it before. I've spoken at, Pink, it was a Pink October, they call it, around the world for Cancer Month. But yeah, I mean, I love addressing audiences on this subject because I really feel it's perspective, right? And some people can't, they just, even though they're experiencing the same thing I experienced, they're facing some sort of potential risk of dying. And they're near death potentially. Right. But they somehow can't see it. And I feel blessed to have been able to see that. Thanks in part to Bob Marley, right?
Well, and you're extracting it from them because it's there. It's all there for them, right? But sometimes they're just unaware.
100%. They just can't see what's right under their nose.
So where does that bring you now with regards to incorporating Dr. John's teachings with your business and so forth? Because again, that's why we're here. We're in London because we just did a breakthrough experience with, how many, was it 60 or 80 people?
Yeah, it was, I'm thinking upwards of 60, yeah.
Yeah, and you facilitated many, many breakthroughs. This was my first one, but I've been doing them one-on-one with clients. So I want to talk about that, or I want you to share about that, because it really, truly is a breakthrough.
100%. So just to kind of circle back to after John consulted with my mom, I started hosting him in Toronto.
Got it.
And when my dad died and I moved to the Emirates, my office manager continued to host him in Toronto. So he was there for many, many years. We filled some rooms for him and had the honor and privilege of working with him in the breakthrough experience, but also as he went to homes and consulted with people privately. So yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. He's done something, and that's why I'm here for the movie premiere as well. You're going to be going tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's just really incredible seeing him get on the big screen and get the attention I think he deserves. Because as you know, mass consciousness travels fast, right?
Yes.
But master consciousness takes time to travel.
And so this is what you and I were talking about, and we both share many of the same commonalities, and I have truly dedicated my adult life to not only my own personal mastery and development, just like you, but it is my obligation to humanity to introduce Dr. John's teachings to as many people as I can. I have to, otherwise I'd be doing a major disservice. And that's what we were talking about. It's mind-boggling how many people still don't know who he is.
I know, and you know what I think we fail to realize, both of us and many people, is how many people are on the planet, right? I mean,
I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, if in the days when there was only television and you hit TV, then you're going to be well known, right?
Right.
Except in the areas of the world where there isn't TV. Now there's internet, and that means there's more opportunity to be out there. But there's also more opportunity for others to be out there, and so there's this competition for attention, right?
Yeah.
There's so much information out there.
Yeah.
You don't have to get his message to the world, but you would love to.
Yeah.
And I would love to too.
Yeah.
And it's happening. It's really happening. And I always say that to think and act like the masses is to be exactly what the master is not.
Indeed.
And he's sharing ways for people to master their life in an incredible way.
Yeah. Well, there's also taking into consideration that it's unfortunate, but there's definitely an increase. Pardon me. There's an increase of people yearning for mastery and development and just becoming better. But there's also a large percentage that aren't, right? So I call it kind of waking up. And for me, I woke up and 2006. Was I practicing the law of attraction and positive thinking before that? Yeah, to a degree, because I've really achieved all the things that I was working for, especially sports as well. But it's crazy to think that not a lot of people still know who he is. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll go right back. All right, so we took an abrupt water break. Where were we?
Yeah, we're speaking about mastering your life. And
Right.
how some people they're just focused on other things, right?
Yeah, it's
Focused on one area of life.
of course, and it's no surprise that that's the case. And we're taught to go to school, behave in a cubicle, go to college, go to university, get yourself in massive student debt, get a job
In a cubicle.
in a cubicle, right? Go to work, collect a paycheck, get married, start a family, live in the white picket fence,
Save
and
for
that's-
retirement.
and that's life.
100%.
To me, that sounds a lot like prison, just a larger version of it. But there are a small percentage of people that are entrepreneurs, and there's a small percentage of people that are just like Neo in the movie The Matrix, just thinking that there's something else out there. And I feel as though that people who have been exposed to or introduced to the law of attraction, because The Secret is the first mainstream, in my opinion, the first sort of mainstream understanding and mass selling of this idea.
Yeah, Earl Nightingale in his I think it was an audio recording. I think it was the first audio recording in personal development in this kind of space to hit a million.
Was it The Strangest Secret?
The Strangest Secret.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. But the Secret, took it to the next level because it was on Oprah several times, right?
Right.
It was a movie. It was a book. And
Now,
so,
I'm sure you can quote Dr. John. I can't, I don't remember, but he says there's a secret within the secret, or there's a secret missing.
yeah, look, there's several issues with The Secret. One of the kids' books I've written is called My Big Secret.
Okay.
And the first idea is that it's not all about attraction. There's an action component, right? There's a difference between somebody who wants to open his own business and is lying on the couch just watching TV all day,
Right.
and someone who has this wish to open their own business and is actually out learning
Yeah.
and doing all the things that you need to learn and acquire and skills and all that upskilling in order to make it happen. So I think if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, you're rewarded to have the thought on what you want,
Of course.
right? So as a man thinketh, so shall he be. True.
Yeah.
But as a man thinketh and acteth, if that's even a word, so shall he or she be, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to also take the footsteps. So I think the action component is missing.
What's that quote? Is it a dull pencil is better than a sharp vision? Something like that?
I think the one I know about the pencil is that it's better to have a short pencil than a long memory.
Yeah, there it is.
Is that the one?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll go with that too.
Yeah.
Because how appropriate is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? And even in the word attraction, there is the word action.
Yes.
And most people are just thinking that, hey, I could just have this wishful thought to achieve something great without actually having to take some footsteps in that direction. It doesn't work that way, And the other thing with The Secret, I wrote a book, this book I was talking about, My Big Secret, and I'm trying to challenge the idea that we get 3 wishes.
Okay.
Growing up, we watch movies and read
Yes.
books about 3 wishes.
Of
The
course.
genie and the whole Will Smith was in that movie. I can't remember the name now. But we don't get 3 wishes, right? We get as many wishes as we wish. But the question is, are you going to attract all the wishes? Because then you're scatterbrained, right?
Right.
And then you can't act on all of them.
Yeah, there's too many to choose from.
Exactly.
Too many to think on.
Exactly. So what I believe is that the secret is to focus on, you get as many wishes as you wish, but focus on the wish that counts most, which is the innermost wish.
Yeah. The most dominant one,
Exactly.
the most valuable one. But
That's it.
valuable, I guess, being the operative word,
Yeah.
because some people might get easily confused with what wish is the most valuable and the one that makes the most impact.
Right.
So make sure you choose wisely.
Exactly. And choose that innermost wish that's in your heart.
Yes.
Because there is no doubt when it's something related to your heart. But there is doubt when it's something related to your head.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell when someone's speaking, a public speaker that's speaking from the head
Yes,
versus someone who's speaking from the heart.
absolutely.
Politicians are great examples of someone speaking from the head.
Yeah.
Whereas, stories where someone's sharing a story, you can tell they're speaking from the heart. So, yeah, you definitely want to be focused on that one that's most valuable to you, which is going to be in your heart.
How did you like that experience? Now, the listenership and viewership don't know about this, but the facilitators before the breakthrough 2 days ago, we did an experience with Man Meet, and she just asked all of us to sit in the circle and open our hearts.
Yeah.
How amazing was that?
That was a beautiful exercise.
Right? And wouldn't it be just so amazing if people had the conscious adaptation and ability to just take a step back for 1 second and just have the know-how to open your heart. Just maybe once a day.
And you're right, because it starts with just taking a moment to do that. But if you're focused from, putting out this fire and then putting out that fire, and next thing you know, the day is done.
Yep.
There's no time to even be aware of what you're doing.
No.
Let alone stop and
Right, and so that's where I was sort of alluding to the go to school, graduate, get the job, paycheck to paycheck, live in a picket fence, and all that stuff.
Right.
How do you have time? How do you have time?
It's just next. It's constantly just keeping your wheels spinning, but not really taking a moment. It's kind of like Stephen Covey's concept of sharpening the saw, right?
I don't know it.
Okay, so like the idea is if you want to cut down this tree and you're sawing at this tree day and night, and now the saw is no longer sharp, it's dull.
Right.
So the question is, do you want to keep sawing or do you want to take a break, sharpen the saw, and then return to it?
Right.
And then you're going to be more efficient, more effective, obviously, more productive.
Sharpen the saw,
Exactly.
or the brain, or the heart, or the body.
Right. And you don't have to just keep going all the time, right?
Yeah. And there's so many people that are just single moms, single dads, families, just go, dulling their blade, right? Wearing that inner machine just
Exactly.
too low.
Right, and it's not effective. Like it's one thing to be go if you're being effective at what you're doing. Athletes go, but they're performing at the top of their game.
Yeah.
They travel from one city to the next. They get the summers where they don't take it off. They also train.
It's strategic.
Right.
Okay, so you being a human behavior expert as well, and you're being a coach, and you've coached all around the world. For the listenership that is go, what are some strategies that they can incorporate to take the foot off the gas pedal, take the dull saw out of the tree, and how can they resharpen it?
Yeah. Well, one is just being aware of when you need to slow down or when you need to take a break, when you need to sharpen the saw, right? It's not just picking a random time, because he may stop to sharpen the saw when it's still sharp.
Right.
But knowing when you're starting to approach dullness, when you're starting to approach a period in your life where, hey, you know what, this might be a strategic time to take a break, to do what I know is going to rejuvenate me.
Yeah.
Right. That could be taking a course. It could be taking a vacation. But staying connected to what's really most important in your life when you're taking that break.
Now hold on a second.
Yeah.
There's a major caveat to that. You said taking a vacation. Most people are doing that 7-day all-inclusive, and they're getting shit-faced every day at the swim-up bar.
Right.
That is not, in my humble opinion, that's not a vacation.
You're right. And you know what I said before that? I said, even if that means taking a course or taking a vacation. And then when I said that, I was almost thinking like, people are going to think that this 1 month of vacation a year is what everyone does.
Yes.
But yet they don't come back fresh for long.
No, they need a vacation from their vacation.
Exactly. So, but that's because they're usually doing debaucherous things.
Yes.
And they're doing uninspiring things.
Yep.
And they're doing it as a group. Whenever you do group stuff, it's hard for everyone to get what they're really after in life.
Say that one more time, because I'm going to segue right after that.
Yeah. So when you do take a vacation, or when you're doing something like a break for the holidays,
Yep.
and everyone's gathering
Yep.
all at once, it's really hard for everyone to get the greatest value out of that experience, because everyone's there for their own reasons, right?
Yep.
So the business guy is now putting the business on hold and going there,
Right.
and unless he can stay connected to business in that social setting and see the opportunities
Yep.
and the ideas that come related to business, that person is going to naturally go into debaucherous stuff.
Sure.
Because he needs pleasure, because he's feeling empty.
I'm so glad you said that. Sure, it is nice escapism and family times and social and so forth. But it is, just as you said, it is so difficult to pursue development in large group settings. Now, a lot of people are scared of that. The being alone. Yeah, being alone calls for development. It's uncomfortable to be alone. It's uncomfortable to sit in silence, or it's uncomfortable to fly to a different country or to go to a conference and sit all by yourself. But, famous quote, Dr. John, growth occurs at the border of challenge and support, right? So when you go to these types of events, you go to a seminar or an experience or a course, you're getting supported, but it's also challenging because you're on your own usually. But you do surround yourself with individuals that are all, like-minded, and they're on that path of betterment as well.
Yeah, some people are alone, they call it loneliness. Some people are alone, they call it solitude, right? So the idea is, what are you doing when you're alone? If you're doing something that has absolutely no meaning to you, which is staring at the walls, then of course you're going to be climbing the walls and want to, jump out the window. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're alone and you're doing something it's deeply meaningful to you and you're connected to that, then you're going to love it. You're going to want more of that. So human beings, we know that if you want to punish a human being, you take them out of a social setting, right? Put them in jail. You take them away from their families, and you deprive them of the social connection.
Yes.
But even in jail, if you want to punish someone who now has built some relationships at some level, you put them in solitary confinement, right?
Right.
So we know that there's a saying in Arabic that says, "Earth without people is hell."
Say it in Arabic first and then translate it to English.
Oh man, my Arabic's bad. No, I know. Jannah Baladans Montandes, which is heaven without people is hell. Heaven.
Oh, yes.
Even heaven without people is hell.
Yeah.
Because we need that. But at the same time, there's got to be the right mix of that, right?
It's all perspective too. I love how you just said that. Being alone, either you take it as loneliness or solitude.
Exactly.
Now, and then, how do you define solitude? You can use that as just alone time, focus, meditate, learn, read, consume, build an idea, write a book, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With kids, you don't have kids yet, do you?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I got 2 boys, right? Just turned 8 and soon to be 13.
Okay.
So these boys, and this is a challenge that a lot of parents have. You see your kid bored. You might be the cause of boredom because you say no more electronics. Like no more iPad, no more phone, no more TV. You want to pull that away so they can go play outdoors or do something, right?
Right.
But when you do that, guess what? You see them bored. And when a parent sees a kid bored, oftentimes a parent wants to rescue them and go down on their knees and play cards with them or go kick a ball with them or something. There's absolutely nothing wrong with playing with your kids. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, when you see a child that's bored, instead of trying to save them, leave them. Because necessity is the mother of innovation, right? When you leave them alone, when they're in that state, they don't want to be in that state.
Right.
So they're going to naturally either spontaneously get some idea, or they're going to ask themselves, well, what would I love to do? If I can't do number 1, what's number 2?
Yeah.
I'm going to go play my Lego. I'm going to do, whatever, kick a ball.
Yep.
So same kind of idea. When a kid's alone, it is, as you mentioned, it could be uncomfortable for some, but not for long, because you're naturally going to, I was going to say gravitate, but in our world, we're naturally going to radiate to something more inspiring.
Yeah. But you teach them to adapt to being alone. But if you don't teach them the skills and the options while they're alone, then I guess, they're going to suffer from that. Or I guess what I'm trying to say is, being alone, if they don't learn how to adapt, then they're just always going to consider that loneliness. And if you rescue them from that, they're not going to learn new skills.
Exactly.
But if you teach them different things to do when they're alone, they're going to have developed self-confidence. They're not going to be scared to be alone. They're going to be creative.
Independent.
Right.
It's an interesting point, because you're right. If a child, every time a child is alone and bored, I'm not talking lonely and distraught and needs some emotional support or something like that. I'm talking, you see a kid that's just is bored, okay?
Yeah.
And they have all these resources at their disposal.
Sure.
If you save them every single time, then they are now dependent on you to save them, and they don't know how to get out of that state.
Yeah.
What we created we called it a super Ferrari boredom list.
Okay.
Okay, it's a boredom list. Okay?
Okay.
It's what to do when you're bored. A list of things you can do when you're bored. But we call it Super Ferrari because I did that for my nephew, who at the time was into cars. He was like 7, so he liked Ferraris.
Yep.
So I just called it that, and all of a sudden he's like, I said, would you want to create a Super Ferrari boredom list? He's like, yeah. It's just a boredom list.
Sure.
Dolled up, right?
Yeah.
And so he said, what is that, Uncle? And I said, just make a list of every single thing you have that you love to do. And so it was like play video games, puzzles, Lego, Jenga. I don't remember what they were.
Sure.
I'm just making up things that my kids know now.
Yeah.
Swim, kick a ball, throw a frisbee, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
So he made this list. So and he's like, Uncle, I don't understand. What is this list going to do? I said, well, anytime you're bored, you can't do number 1 because there's no internet.
Sure.
You can't do number 2 because it's raining outside. You can't play football, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You go to number 3.
Yeah.
So the minute you're bored, you think and say, what else could I do?
And they get a little excited to go to that Ferrari list.
That's it.
100%. It's such a great tool.
It's a simple thing, right?
Yeah.
And even as adults, we forget like the things we love doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the minute you have a long drive, you think, oh man, I dread this drive or I dread this flight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have an opportunity to do something.
Yep.
Whether it's read a book, write a book, be on the internet, don't have internet, you can
not just watch the in-flight entertainment.
Exactly. And sometimes you might, because I watched Barbie on the way here, only because, and that would be a movie I would never like naturally gravitate to.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
But somebody said to me, hey, there's a deep message in it. Check it out. So I watched the whole movie.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it from a perspective of a storyteller that I am, and I write books and stuff.
Right.
And so I got a lot out of it.
So what was the message and what was the deeper meaning that you're gonna?
It was incredible. It was just that do we live in a patriarchy where males dominate the world? Do women dominate the world? Are women behind men? Oh, there's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
It's pretty deep. It sounds like a very superficial movie, but there's
levels. Sure, there's levels. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the breakthrough experience. Your involvement, what you've seen, how you're involved with, hosting your own as well as facilitating with Dr. John, and then let's go where you're going.
Yeah, sure. So I was hosting John for, like I said, pre-2004, and then when I moved to the Emirates, he visited there. He did a breakthrough experience. I was supporting the person that was hosting him.
Right.
I've done events. I've spoken at events with like 400 or 500 people, just speaking about this event that's happening. Dr. John's in town. I connect them with TV and radio, so we can get on. I think it was TV and magazines while he was in the Emirates, because I definitely want to get his message out there for sure. Because his message is our message. Yeah. Right. He was just born first.
Right.
And we believe in the same idea, the same paradigms. But when he was in Abu Dhabi, I spent 3 hours on his ship. He gave me a tour of the ship. Yeah. Beautiful place. And then the next day I messaged him saying, hey, we'd like to give you a tour of Abu Dhabi. He's like, sure. So I showed him some of the 7-star hotel, some of the attractions, right? 7-star hotel, Sheikh Zayed Mosque, the president of the country, a former president who founded the Emirates. And we saw some attractions, that sort of thing. And then we were discussing the movie. And that's when I think I was one of the last guys to get into the movie.
Cool.
And so we did the recording in Dubai, recorded the movie. And so that's why I flew here, right, is to do the premiere. Yeah. And then I also realized that it's timed perfectly with a breakthrough. And so that's why I came to facilitate.
Got it.
It's my, I want to say 3rd or 4th time facilitating in London.
So for those that don't know, what does a facilitator do and why are you doing it?
Yeah. So a facilitator is somebody who has trained under Dr. John Demartini to understand how to use his method. The breakthrough experience, the method in the breakthrough experience is called the Demartini method. Yeah. And they're helping people get through the actual method. Because as I mentioned at the introduction at the breakthrough, that this is a marathon of the mind. It might be an Ironman of the mind, actually.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's tough to be able to see what they're unaware of and what they're blind to, and expose their blind spots, and then shift their perspective and shift their perceptions and change their thinking. So my vision is to continue to help the Demartini Institute.
How have you incorporated it into your own private practice? Because at the end of the day, you are still an individual and you've got your own mastery business, and you're an author and you're a speaker and all of your projects. So what are you doing now?
Yeah. So It started in 2000. In the year 2001, I opened my clinic as a chiropractor, and I realized that most health problems, most of the neck pain, back pain, disc injuries, headaches, the top conditions that I saw in my clinic, to name a few, most of them were not caused by a slip or fall or a fender bender or lifestyle of sorts in terms of physical lifestyle. It was mostly, I found at the root of it was psycho-emotional.
Are we going into TMS? Tension myositis syndrome? Have you heard about that?
I can I think I have an idea of what that
Is it
could be.
psychosomatic? Are you alluding to that?
I'm alluding to this. I'm alluding to. I'll tell you how I don't want to say that term just yet.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what I perceived it to be at the time.
Sure.
In 2000, I thought it was that stress was the number one cause of illness. It was stress.
Right.
So I was measuring stress.
Okay.
Using thermal scanners along the spine to measure, different surface temperature in the skin. And I was using a technology that a medical doctor created that at the time was supposedly more accurate than blood pressure as an indicator of heart health.
Okay.
And it's called the aortic index. So I was using those two pieces of technology to see the impact that stress, that's the word I was using, stress was having on people's lives. People say, I'm stressed at work, I'm stressed at home, I'm stressed this, stressed that.
Yeah.
And then I had one patient come in. And instead of treating her physically as a chiropractor, we talked. She just wanted to talk. Now, I studied psychology at the University of Toronto. Basic psychology is a minor psychology, to be exact. And I had some basic skills, and I just let her speak, but I challenged her perspective. I was like, well, it doesn't sound that bad. How else could you look at it? That kind of thing. Sure. I don't even remember what I did, to be honest with you, back then. But I remember just not really having any skills and just winging it. And then I rescanned both spinal and heart, and her scans were perfect. And I was completely blown away. I thought I stumbled upon a discovery that's going to completely change the world.
Right.
And so everything crashed. All my computers crashed. All the technology, nothing would work. I couldn't print them or anything.
What?
That's what happens when you get elated in yourself and in the process. And that's when I just was on path to start getting at the root of problems. And I started saying that my cause is to get at the cause of your health concerns.
Right.
And so that's when my coaching practice was born. 2000, 2003, I was just studying, learning, reading everything I could from the personal development space. I didn't want to become a psychologist, although I considered it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't interested in being a psychiatrist because I just didn't like the model, the biochemical model of psychiatry, which is medication. Yeah. And so I started applying some of these things I learned. When I met Dr. Demartini, his technique was also something that I used a lot to help people with various things, and especially grief. He's got a beautiful approach, with grief.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to use the word therapy. We don't want to use the word psychotherapy and all that, but it's therapeutic.
It is therapeutic.
If
they come for therapeutic reasons,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But some people come because they just want to elevate their game, right?
Yeah.
They want to take their business to the next level. They don't really need any therapy of sorts. Their life is great. They're grateful for their life, but they want to just upskill and understand how they could be getting in their own way, how their mind might be working against them instead of for them in the workplace, for example, in their entrepreneurship.
So how can people sort of elevate? Because there's always different levels. So what are some of your favorite tools to elevate?
Yeah, so I just finished a book called Fear Forward. And
Is that right there?
That's the one, yeah.
Let's see it. Bring it back.
Sure. And Dr. Demartini wrote the foreword for it.
Very cool. Fear Forward. Let's move it right here so we can see it on this one. A 4-step method. Free yourself from stress, struggles, and fears. Dr. Oudi, I'm not even going to attempt to say your last name.
It's easier than you think. Abu Chakra.
Abu Chakra. That's easy. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Demartini did the forward. Beautiful. So what's the, would you consider yourself more Canadian or more American?
Oh, Canadian for sure.
Okay, so
I spent 4 years in Texas. That's it.
So what's the Coles notes on this one? Because I'm not going to say, what's the other one? It's there's Coles notes for Canada, and then there's something else for the Americans.
Got me on that one. I know there is, yeah.
Okay, so what's the Coles notes?
Yeah, so the premise that of the book, okay, and the paradigm that we're challenging is that, okay, let me simplify even further. The book is called Fear Forward because in order to move forward in life, you got to face your fear.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it. You can't hijack the process. You want to move forward, you got to face your fears.
Think about that for a sec. Fear forward. Fear, and then people are like, fuck no. I don't want to. I'm scared.
Exactly. But that's the only way. The only way to move forward is face fear. And watch this. If you want to make the greatest forward progress, you got to face your greatest fear. That's when it gets, quote, scarier.
In your practice and in your experience, have you realized or observed a common biggest fear among people, or are they all different?
The illusionary biggest fear is that all human beings fear the unknown.
Okay.
That's what people think. That's the most common fear that people think.
Kind of like
is
being
different.
in the dark.
Being in the dark.
Unknown.
You don't know. It's in the dark. Or I'm flying on an airplane for the first time. I don't know what to expect. I'm going moving to a new country for the first time. Don't know what to expect. It's a new relationship. Don't know what to expect.
So that's the umbrella fearing of the
That's the umbrella illusionary fear, because
Right.
it's not really a fear.
Okay.
Because you can't actually fear the unknown. Because in order to fear something, because fear is an emotion, and in order to experience, feel, generate an emotion, there has to be substance, information, or content in the mind.
Right. From past experience.
Right. And so if we don't fear the unknown, then we fear the known, which is past experience.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you know. You only know yesterday.
Right.
You don't know the next millisecond what's going to happen.
Yes. Okay, so then going back to that, so are you saying that everyone's main fear is fear of the unknown?
No, I'm saying everyone thinks that
Yes.
they fear. That's the number one fear that they think they have. What I call in the book, the mother of infinite fears, is the fear of history repeating itself. That's what everyone's fearing.
The master of all fears,
The mother of infinite fears.
the mother of infinite fears is fear from past history. Is that what
Is
it
the fear, of history repeating itself.
Okay, got it.
That's what people are afraid of. When they meet someone and that person triggers them, that person is reminding them of their unaddressed past.
Sounds like anxiety.
You
Or a portion of it, right?
Yeah. Well, in the book, I made a distinction between fear, anxiety, and panic attacks. And
Okay.
I basically said that panic attacks are the highest level. That's when something is right in front of you.
Yep.
The lion is right in front of you.
Okay.
You're now on stage about to present, and you go into panic attack mode. Okay?
Okay.
Base fear is the fear you have. And lower grade fear would be anxiety, because you're anticipating
Yep.
something coming, but it's still far away. And the closer you get, you go from anxiety to fear to full-blown panic attack. Not everyone goes through all stages.
So in the book, do you discuss modalities and strategies how someone can move away from or sort of manage anxiety and manage fear and manage panic attacks?
Yep. The whole idea of the book is, number one, to make a fear inventory, right? To do an audit. What am I afraid of? That's what I call a conscious fear inventory. I'm afraid of swimming. I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of driving. I'm afraid of airplanes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Afraid of public speaking.
So make a list, conscious fear inventory. Great.
Correct. Yeah. Then you basically have to uncover your unconscious fears.
So what's underlying of those?
No, this is a completely separate list.
Okay.
An unconscious fear, I call anything that you would call a stressor, a struggle, a problem, an issue, a challenge, or an obstacle. Any one of those things is just code language for fear. Because I believe that fear sits at the center of every problem. And if fear sits at the center of every problem, then fear stands tall at the center of every solution, if you know how to leverage it.
Okay, so they've done the conscious list, the
Unconscious list. Then you find out, what is my number one fear? What is it?
If we were to make a master number one, is there like a number one average?
I don't think I have enough experience at this point to say what the number one is, because
What are some of the
like
the top
public
ones?
speaking
Okay.
is a big one. Fear of failure.
Yep.
Relationships.
Yep.
Starting a business.
Yep.
Dying.
Sure.
Not being there for my kids. There's so many, and it varies. And you know what? The starting point is not really that important, because someone might say I fear failure. But then, like you said, umbrella, that's an umbrella term. There could be, when you start peeling it away, you start getting to the deeper fears. In fact, that's what we do as an important step, is once you form a fear-based statement, once you know what fear is, then you got to figure out, what is the deepest layer of my fear? Because if there's a fire in the basement of a building, you don't want to be spraying at the penthouse, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you don't want to be, you want to approach it at the level that it exists. You want to get the real root of it.
And that right there is the fundamental understanding of holistic medicine, and in my practice, gut health and chiropractic. Get to the root.
Get to the root.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Because how are you going to address and impact the fruits if you don't get to the roots, right?
Yeah, of course.
You got to get to the deepest layer.
All right.
So once you get the inventory, then you work through the method, which is, like I said, the 4-step process of finding out what is the fear and get in the basement of it, establishing where it comes from.
Yep.
Because if fear is history based, we don't fear the mystery of tomorrow, we fear the history of yesterday, and therefore it's based in yesterday.
Yes.
So we got to do a hunt and going into an adventure and find out where does this fear come from. An example is I used to be afraid of heights, but not just any height. Like I'm not talking a few foot on a small shed or on top of a house. I'm talking really high. And I didn't know where it came from. I'm like, I must have came from when I fell off the roof when I was 10. I broke my arm and my nose at the same time because I landed on my side. I'm like, that's got to be the source of it. But it wasn't. The source of it was when I was 4. And I had somebody who was a family friend drape me over Niagara Falls.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
As
a joke. Just put me over the falls to see hear me cry, basically, and get a laugh out of me, and out of the rest. Freak out my sister or my mom or something. I don't know.
Right.
But I started kicking and squirming though. This is a close to it. Is I wanted him to leave me alone, but of course he couldn't.
Right.
And so when I came back from that, I was from then I was afraid of heights at a really high level. Have you seen the movie Cliffhanger?
Of course.
Yeah, with Stallone, right? Okay. Do you know that opening scene? Do you remember the opening scene?
He's hanging from a rope.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his friend's wife is stuck.
Yes.
His friend already made it to the other side.
Yep.
And now he's helping her get out. He's in the helicopter, I think. He's trying to help her.
Yeah.
And she gets stuck.
Right.
And so he holds her hand and the glove slips off and she falls. I used to watch that movie and my hands would just get so wet, soaking wet.
I wanted to, this is totally, it's not off topic, but this is so important for parents and relatives. If you think you're being comical by playing a little trick or prank on a child, like you see the parents putting the blindfold and they put the chocolate pudding on the kid and they pretend that it's shit. That's fucking traumatic. That leaves a mark forever. I don't care what you think, that's gonna leave a mark. And so when you're a cousin, you said?
It was a family friend.
Family member, just being a jerk, being a joke, just holding you over, that's going to leave a mark, which clearly it did.
I wasn't aware of it. No, until my 30s.
Yeah, and so we talk about healing traumas and healing our issues. And most cases, when adults are finally on this path and they've realized that they got shit that they need to fix, it's traumas, and it normally stems from their childhood, and it's very difficult to pinpoint. And so if you're not aware, how are you gonna realize that when you were 4 years old and when your relative did that, that's what led you to have that fear? And so you might live your entire life going over bridges, being scared, not wanting to go to a sky rise at a restaurant or something, but you can't figure it out.
Right. Now, here's the interesting part is it wasn't a high priority fear to work on. It was one of those things where I was like, man, I keep helping all these people with their fears. Why don't I work on my own? On that one. Because I always say prioritize your fears, right? I'm going to clear fears related to my business, related to writing, related to speaking. Those are more important to me. Yeah. I don't care to swim with crocodiles. I have no interest.
Right.
I don't care to, some people, my mom is in her, she's up there in age. I don't say her number. She doesn't like to say that in public. She's up there. Yeah. And she's now focusing on breaking her fear of swimming.
Cool.
Towards, later in her life. Because it wasn't important.
But what a great exercise. Yeah. It just means that it doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah, exactly.
You can always do work.
Right, but focus on, like we talked about, focus on the wish that counts most, the innermost wish.
Yeah.
Focus on the fear that counts most. The one that's going to give you the greatest bang for your buck. Because we want to move forward in life, but if we may want to move forward in one area of our life, and you want to focus on that fear, or you want to focus on a fear that will impact more than one area of your life, or potentially all of them. That's the fear you want to invest in. Because then you're going to get the greatest return on investment of time and energy, right?
Yeah. Pass me that book again. Let me show that one more time. So, Fear Forward, a four-step method to free yourself from stress, struggles, and fears. Dr. Oudi, Abu Chakra.
Nice, you nailed it.
I got it.
Well done. Quick learner, my friend. But let's circle back to trauma real quick.
Sure.
I did a radio show recently, and I was speaking about off air after the show was done. She's like, "Wow, we got some great interaction. I think we should have you back." I was like, "If you want to make it interesting, let's talk about trauma." And she's like, "Okay." I said, because she's like, "Oh my God, there's so many." I said, "I actually don't believe there is. I don't believe it exists. Just like I don't believe in fear of the unknown." And she's like, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, "Well, it's just an event. How you label the event determines whether it's traumatic or terrific. It's really subjective, like solitude or loneliness.
Right.
Like, is it a weeping willow tree or is it a hanging happy tree kind of thing?"
Oh,
right?
yeah, sure.
So it's all perspective. And I think it's important because if people label something as traumatic, then they think that there's nothing they can really do about it except just to move on and on and on.
Right.
It still exists. But
Right.
if you go back, you can actually change the story you've been telling yourself. And it goes from a traumatic event to just a life experience that you had.
And in most cases, if that event happened a long time ago, there's time for elaboration and sort of changing of the actual event to sort of complement their story and their new identity, right? So they can run that story.
And a lot of people get stuck in their story. And just like this plant here beside us, if you want to cut this thing down, the worst thing you can do is water it, right? But most people water their story over and over again, and it becomes such a tough thing to chop down. Doesn't matter.
Say that again.
So if you want to cut down this plant or a tree, and imagine an oak tree.
Sure.
The worst thing you can do is fuel it and water it, because then it grows stronger,
Right.
it grows taller, it becomes harder to cut down.
Yeah.
And what people do with their stories, their past stories, right, that they've been telling themselves, is they keep reinforcing the story by talking about it over and over again. And it's as if they're watering it, which makes it harder to rewrite it.
Of course.
And if you learn how to, because you can't change the past, right? But you can change the effect it's having on you.
Yep.
And to do that, you got to rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you rewrite the past, you rewrite the future.
Can be a little scary and fearful for some people,
Yeah.
but it's doable.
Yeah, you know what? Fear, like the word spirit, has been replaced by the word energy. We don't really think of spirit anymore.
Right.
We don't think of soul.
Yes.
When's the last time you had a conversation where people talk about their soul? My soul wants this. My soul's calling for this. It's all about energy and energy.
Mm-hmm.
Just like fear, it's all stress.
Right.
And then when it comes to fear, it also takes the backseat for another word, and that's goals. Right? Because most people are goal oriented. They focus on their, New Year's resolutions.
Right.
My goal this year is to do this in my business, or this in my relationship, or this is my weight. Right? So they're focused on goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Where fear setting gets you way more bang for your buck. Because the reason why you might not even be achieving your goals is because there's a fear preventing you from taking the actions and the decisions necessary in order to achieve the goal.
Fear setting. How powerful is that?
Yeah. Now, I started the fear inventory in the book.
Yep.
The book was near done. And so I wanted to make sure I knew as much as I could about fear. So I listened to every podcast possible on YouTube and books. And Tim Ferriss says in his YouTube video, I think it's about 4 million people that's watched it. Last I checked, 3.9 or something. And he said that fear setting might be more important than goal setting.
It's the first time I've ever heard of it, but I think I'm going to agree.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, because I can take a guy, and this is what I do when I coach people, right? Or I'm doing talks and I'm doing groups, is I say to them, what is it that you want? You start with what you want to achieve. Start with the forward, not the fear. What is the area of your life that you want to move forward?
Okay.
Perfect. You nailed it. Your business. Great. What is the number one issue you have that you know if you solve, if you overcome, you transcend, will move your business forward? And then a person will raise their hand and say, public speaking. I'm like, so I make sure, right? How is public speaking going to move your career forward? It's like, well, I spend time one-to-one. I have like 6 meetings a day. That's 6 hours a day.
Right.
3 hours of admin. That's a 9-hour day. So I met 6 people. But if I do a talk, I could be speaking in front of 60.
Sure.
So it's a 10x return.
Yep.
I'm like, fantastic. That's the fear you want to work on. Because first you got to identify, so you don't spend your energy on overcoming a fear of swimming when you're really, your life is going to move forward to the greatest degree if you move your business forward, right?
Of course. Yeah. Good stuff. How would you like to conclude this, or what last messages would you like to say to the listenership and the viewership?
How much time do you have? I'll end with the concept of fear of the unknown again. Okay, watch this. Fear of the unknown gets you limited results at best, if any. Okay?
Right.
Because there's nothing you can do about fear of the unknown. Because if I say to this guy who wants to move his business forward, okay, what are you afraid of? He's like, I don't know. Well, then he's got to wait till he shows up at the networking event or at the public speaking event or at the board meeting and deliver the talk and find out, oh, that's what I was afraid of.
Right.
So you're always one step behind fear.
Mm-hmm.
At best, I've heard it put, which is a book, feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's great because you have the fear of public speaking, but you went and did the talk.
Right.
That's fantastic. But guess what? The fear still exists.
Yep.
You haven't addressed the root of it. That's why I said you get no results or limited results at best.
Mm-hmm.
With the fear of the unknown paradigm that probably started with Plato, when I trace it back,
Yep.
okay? Or some philosophers that believe that we feared other cultures because we fear cannibals.
Sure.
Cannibalism.
Yep.
Okay, so fear the unknown. If your listeners want to write down these two words, unknown equals limited results. But watch this. If you adopt the fear of the known paradigm, can't change the past, right? The known part of the past is generating fear, but you can rewrite it.
Yes.
If you change the story, you rewrite the story, you change your future, you rewrite your future. Guess what you get? Unlimited results.
Unlimited.
Right. So if you unbuckle the un from unknown and add it to the limited, you go from fear of the known, giving you limited results. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's easier if I write it down, but you know what I mean?
They'll write it down. I'll write it down too.
Unknown equals limited results.
Yep.
Known equals unlimited results.
Yeah. Amazing. One more message.
To think and act like the masses is to be exactly what the master is not. So if you want to live an incredible life, you got to focus on the things that are going to help you master your life across the board. And I'll end, if I have 1 minute and 56 seconds,
Sure.
how about I end with a little rhapsody, a little spoken word poetry for your team? Yeah?
Yep.
All right. I'll say it to you, okay?
All right.
Stop for a moment and think about how you'd absolutely love to live.
Okay.
Do you want to open an online business? Another nutritional business? Do you want to get into AI? You know you got so much to give. What is it that you'd love to wake up and stay up to do? That is the first question I have for you. But the second is a little bit more complex. It has to do with how you want to be remembered when you're gone. When you're done living, done being, when you said so long. What do you want to leave behind? What do you want your mark to be? We all want to leave one. You've seen it spray painted on walls and carved into a tree. Come on now, these are the deep questions you want to be asking. Instead of wasting your time on resenting and merely relaxing, think long, think deep, find your answers and commit. Commit to waking up and going to bed and in between chasing it. Chasing that dream, chasing that adventure, chasing those goals in that joint venture. This is where you shift from stress, fear, and anxiety to creating your masterpiece, to building your empire, to paving your legacy. Do you want to be remembered? Do you want to stop feeling so rotten? Then get out there and go live that life that ain't easily forgotten. Thanks for having me.
I would drop the mic, but they're expensive.
I thought the same thing.
Thank you so much for doing this. What a
Thank
treat.
you, man.
What a treat. What an honor. I'm so glad that we were able to film a friggin' podcast in London, England.
Right?
Who would have thought?
In a beautiful place like this, in Bloomsbury.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a review, and also be sure to check out in the exclusive members area lots of other content, lots of live calls, and being part of the community. Until next episode, Gut Whisperer out.